Hello, and welcome to Making Winter Wonder Mandalas. I'm Ameena Batada, and I'll be facilitating this session. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge poweredtemplate.com, which is the source of some of the slides for this slide deck. So this is an opportunity for you to rediscover the abundance the season has to offer and to revive your own wonder at the shapes, textures, and beauty around us. This is a go at your own pace session, so you can stop and start it as needed. And you can also do this with other people, perhaps as a good family or friend activity during the holidays. I'm going to begin with some acknowledgements, and then I'm going to introduce some of the origins and analogs of circle-based mandala type designs. And then I'm going to encourage you to take a mindful walk and to gather natural fallen items for your mandala. And then I will guide you through the creation, and hopefully then you can return the materials of a nature-made mandala. So I'd like to start with some acknowledgements. First, I would like to acknowledge the land, people, and customs here in the Asheville or Togiasti area, and they are the Anikituwagi, or known as the Cherokee as well. And just to remind us, especially in an activity like this, that we have a small role to play in a very large landscape, and that this place has been stewarded for a very long time. I'd also like to acknowledge the families and ancestors that we all have who have brought us to this point of where we are and from whom we've come. And if you're like me, you might have some special connections to particular ancestors who maybe have inspired you or passed on to you certain skills or passions as well. And so I just want to take a moment to acknowledge those people in our lives. I also want to make a sort of logistical acknowledgement that there are a number of images that I will share with you today, and I have put on the slides the links to the sources. However, if you would like to send me an email and ask me about any of the additional information, I'll be happy to share with you those sources as well. And I want to make a personal acknowledgement as well, and that is that while I have a very deep personal connection and experiences with mandala making and with some of the traditions, I do not consider myself an expert really in any way. And so while I'm glad that we're on this journey together, I encourage you to create your own way of making circle-based and geometric designs, and to work with natural items in the ways that feel comfortable to you without necessarily thinking that you need to adhere to a certain tradition. I'm not going to specify a particular tradition that we're going to work through. It's more secular in that way. And then finally, I'm making this in the fall of 2021, and I just want to acknowledge that we are still in the midst of a pandemic, and that there is a lot going on for a lot of people right now, and a lot to hold, very emotionally charged time, and that looking at and creating mandalas is a wonderful mindfulness activity, and something that can hopefully help to heal as well as inspire. So let's begin with some origins and analogs. Most people come to know mandalas through the Tibetan or Tantric Buddhist traditions of creating sand mandalas. And here you can see an image of a sand mandala, which is an integral part of the spiritual life of specific Buddhist traditions. And as you can see, there's somebody creating this. It takes multiple days usually with multiple people, and is very precise, and dates back to the 5th or 6th centuries, these traditions of teaching spiritual lessons and inspiring one another through the mandala form, which is typically a circular or some square or geometric form. Here we see a Hindu mandala, and mandala also is known as container of the spirit. And this one is has some symbolism to it, and you can see the lotus petals in the circles and the triangles, which have different meanings based on their orientation, um, contained within the sort of a square geometric shape, which are also very representative in Hindu traditions. Around the world, we see these patterns repeated. Here is the famous sunstone created in Mexico, and you can see those repeated concentric circles and imagery. Also, here is a mosaic that is in a Paris mosque that is Islamic and has very typical Islamic geometric designs contained within it. Absolutely beautiful, all of them. And then here is a pine burr quilt that's actually three-dimensional layering of fabric that comes from African American communities here in the United States of America. And fairly intricate designs, and also following that concentric circle kind of look to it, and oftentimes colorful, though not necessarily. We also see mandalas naturally occurring in nature. Here are just some examples. A cross section of a citrus fruit, like an orange, snowflakes, which we can see at this time of the year, as well as a flower and a clover leaf. Again, some symmetry that exists there that can be repeated in the segments. And then over in the far left bottom, we see little mandalas, which also remind us that this design is very connected to some of the sacred geometry that exists in nature, such as the golden ratio, when we see spirals, as well as fractals, which are repeated patterns of varying sizes. And so when we see the little sort of firecracker explosion in this as part of a larger one, there are aspects that are soothing to our being as well. And so some of what we glean from mandalas is explicit, and some of it is implicit, having an effect on us without or even really knowing it, or at least not consciously processing it. So today, I'm interested in making nature mandalas with you, so nature-made mandalas. And I want to show you a couple of examples, and then we'll talk about making your own. Here's one, and both examples come from a website called Moss and Fog. And as you can see here, the person who created this mandala brought together some pine cones, leaves, and acorns and twigs. And starting from the center, those acorn caps that are turned upside down are just so interesting with their double color. And then each of those leaves has a very interesting variegation as well. There are 5 of them, and so this mandala has been divided into 5 areas. And then also there are images that are going outward and are sort of falling in between those. And the twigs are a nice counterpoint to that radiation that is happening, or that radiating that's happening as well. And here's another one that I quite enjoy, maybe because of these little unique carrots that have been pulled from the ground, and their roots meet in the middle. And so again, that radiating, and then a counterpoint with those leaves or petals, and then some greenery that's kind of, again, bringing that radiating together, and literally capped by the acorn caps around it. And here there are only 4 different kinds of items. And so as you get ready to go and gather, you may think about, well, how many items might I be picking up while I'm out there? So as we begin to get ready for the creation of our nature-made mandalas, I want to remind you that every step is a contemplative practice. And that includes when we're gathering items, creating the mandala, and even returning the items. And what do I mean by contemplative practice? Well, some things that may be considered would be that we focus on the present moment, that we spend some time gazing, inquiring, and using our senses. And this is during each one of these steps. That we notice our physical, mental, and emotional sensations, and that we come to the process with intentionality. And that could mean that we are intentional in how we pick something up or put something down, or it could be intentional in how much we take as well. And to keep rooted in this practice, a kindness, both to oneself and to all others and beings, as well as the natural world. And this will, I think, become more clear as you engage in the process. So beginning with gathering the items. So in a minute, I'm going to invite you to stop this recording and to go off and find some natural items that you can use to create your mandala. And to keep in mind during this practice to breathe, because although that seems natural and maybe should go without saying, make sure you're breathing. Sometimes we hold our breath when we're focused, and just remembering to breathe, and maybe notice if there are any smells that you detect as you're walking around, maybe pine needles or maybe something like that. And to bring back only fallen items, it's tempting to pluck something from a bush, but to try to pick only things that have already fallen to the ground will be the least impact on nature. And look for a variety of items, the kinds of items, the shapes, the sizes, and the colors that will enhance the aesthetic value of the mandala. And as you do that, take some time to notice, how do they look, feel, smell, and maybe even sound in your hand or under your feet. And consider bringing multiples of some items so they can each belong into a specific segment. And then take some time to notice how you feel. Notice your mental, emotional, and physical sensations. What does it feel like to bend down to pick something up? What's running through your mind? If it's something you have to do later, can you acknowledge it and let it go and come back to the present moment? Are there emotions that come up for you? Is there something that reminds you of a special relationship or something else? And then just coming back to your breath now and again as you go through. And once you've collected the items, you can return and restart the video so that you can hear my guidance for creating your mandala. Well, welcome back. I hope your gathering practice went well. And now we're going to tune in to make the nature-made mandala. So one of the first things you'll want to do is to identify a canvas for your mandala. And this would be a flattish place on which you can create your mandala design. And this might be a poster board, a porch, a patch of grass, a driveway, a plate, a sheet, or anything really that meets the basic requirements. In these images that I'm showing you, I used a white poster board, and I took out my materials and put them where I could see them and observe them, and start to separate out or organize some of the shapes, sizes, and so forth of the items. You might want to organize them to get the sense of what you have. And then once you have your items to the side and where you want them, then you can begin creating your mandala. Often we begin the mandala building from the center and we build outward, placing items in quadrants or some other repeating segment. Or you may wish to create yours more freeform, and that's fine. Because we are not following any particular tradition, this should be something that is fun and enjoyable to you, and really just allow your creativity to flow. I will speed through my example here so you can get a sense of how I created mine. And then you can pause the video again and create your mandala and then restart it at the end for the final words and guidance. As you do that, remember to breathe and to take note of your sensations, including the mental, emotional, and physical sensations that you have. Now that you've finished your mandala, take a moment to view it. Breathe in and out fully and notice how you feel. Creating and viewing mandalas helps us to connect more deeply with nature and ourselves and can contribute to individual and collective well-being. You may choose to photograph your mandala and then, with as much intention as you brought to collecting and creating your mandala, take some time to return your items to the natural spaces where you found them so that they may resume their part in the collective and cyclical processes of the season and our world. I hope you've enjoyed today's session, and good for you to take some time for you and for this act of creative expression. Pema Chodron said, "Each person's life is like a mandala, a vast, limitless circle. We stand in the center of our own circle, and everything we see, hear, and think forms the mandala of our life. Everything that shows up in your mandala is a vehicle for your awakening." Well, I wish you well, and thank you again for joining this class.